Mage Storytime, Episode 19, Child Liberation Front. This is the continuing story of the Iron Goldfish, a party of role-players who awakened as mages. Our cast includes Alwi, who manipulates time with his phone; Bard, a mind and spirit mage who uses superheroes as his gods; Critical, who improves the luck of others through his own pain; Handy, a correspondence-using thief who steals items at long range; Kitty, who empowers his stickers and cats with spirits; Tello, a postmodern mage who uses a hodgepodge of skills to manipulate forces and matter; and Weeb, who uses his life skills to enhance his martial arts and Chinese medicine. While we recovered from our adventures playing a role-playing game, Tello decided it was time for her to join a tradition and gain the benefits of organizational membership. Needing to find a spirit guardian, or totem, to join the Dream Speakers, she went on a quest to the spirit world. On landing, or whatever you call it when you appear in a pseudo-real mystical landscape, she found herself surrounded by giant trees and ferns, far taller than anything she had seen before. And she was a nature lover and outdoors woman, so she had seen plenty. A large, scaly bird appeared suddenly, and, predatory lust in its beady eyes, dove at her. A few minutes of dodging and ducking allowed her to shake her avian pursuer, and Tello found herself on the edge of a purplish sea. Peering in, she saw primeval, antediluvian water creatures that seemed content to mind their own business. As she stood on the shore, monstrous tentacles burst forth from the waves, followed by a gelatinous body with a huge, glaring eye. She felt an enormous mental pressure as the beast started to speak into her mind, only for its forming words to be replaced by a squeal of pain as an enormous whale, with teeth like swords, thrust forth from the water and chomped into the creature. As it finished its squid dinner, the creature stared at Tello and formed a single, determined thought in her mind. "You are a moron." And then she woke up with a strange tattoo on her arm and a new spiritual friend. Bard's adventure in getting a spirit guardian, not to join the tradition, he just wanted one, was a lot simpler. He just went to the part of the spirit realm where his associates hung out and asked one to be his buddy. It's surprisingly easy to get superheroes to help you. It's kind of in their job description. Everyone else had a similarly bland week before our next meeting, although Kitty did build himself a lightsaber. When we arrived, we found 2 pieces of mail addressed to us. Formal envelopes, fancy paper, wax seals, the whole 9 yards. The only apparent difference, aside from the return address, was that one was on white paper and one on black. They turned out to be a summons from the Celestial Chorus and the Athanatos traditions, respectively. We decided that the chorus was probably going to be a more pleasant meeting, and went there first. When we arrived, one of the preachers who we'd met previously invited us to his office. Closing his door, he informed us that he had a project that needed our assistance. We were becoming quite the errand boys, apparently. When we pressed for details, he hesitantly began to explain to us about magical avatars, the soul connection that allowed awakened mages like us to perform magic. And then he told us that some people, called Widderslanche, were born with inverted avatars that pushed them towards destruction and devolution instead of ascension like most people. A process could be done by the evil Nefandi to basically turn someone's soul inside out, and occasionally these persons would be reincarnated with a corrupted avatar. Such people were destined to be serial killers, mass murderers, school administrators, and other types of monster. The preacher told us that, through unspecified means, the Celestial Chorus had found one such child born to a Nefandous couple. "Are you asking us to kidnap a baby?" Alwi blurted out. "I mean, we prefer the term rescue, but..." Apparently, the chorus hoped to raise the child in a loving environment and make sure that its darkened nature was corrected for. Maybe they would even be able to restore the avatar to health. Some bargaining then took place, as kidnapping was a lot more serious than the light domestic terrorism we had previously engaged in, at least morally. But after offering us a few Protestant indulgences and a boon from the chorus to be granted in the future, basically a magically reinforced IOU, we said we might be able to help. We also did some research to verify the preacher's description. which mostly resorted to looking up the term on a Mage the Ascension wiki and hoping it was more real than fantasy. Then we went to see the Euthanatos, hoping their request would be more reasonable. It was not. Although Dee Dee, our chipper Euthanatos host, was all smiles when we arrived, she quickly shifted the conversation onto avatars. We guessed, correctly it turns out, that if one tradition was trying to steal this baby, another one would be interested in the same thing. That might account for the watchers the chorus had seen lurking about the Nefandi's house. As the feeling of deja vu intensified, we helpfully explained to Dee Dee that another tradition might be interested in taking the child and trying to rehabilitate it. What should we do if, hypothetically, another tradition asked for our assistance? Or we fell in love with the baby, or someone offered to pay us more? Hey, the heart wants what it wants, and what it wants is cash. Since that was also the Euthanatos plan, Dee Dee seemed willing to work with another group of mages. After all, they were more powerful together, and it would keep the child from the Nefandi, which was the ultimate goal. They might even be able to help one another raise the child successfully. This seemed far more cooperative and reasonable than the traditions normally were, in our experience, so we were immediately suspicious. But careful scrutiny proved that Dee Dee was clean. Some phone calls after that indicated that both traditions were willing to put aside their differences, and so long as we separated the doomed baby from its evil parents, they would even let us determine who got the child. We also figured out that the people the chorus had seen watching the child were undercover Euthanatos, and the ones the Euthanatos had seen were choristers. Our discussion came to an impasse until Weeb returned from a business trip and we foisted the decision off on him. Ultimately, he couldn't decide either, so we determined to meet the prospective parents of this doomed baby. The Celestial Chorus had found a friendly Midwestern couple named Jonathan and Martha Dent, although they preferred Ma and Pa. They were awakened choristers, but that didn't seem to affect their Midwestern sense of friendliness. They were delightful and charming in a saccharine way. Even their grown adopted son Clark was a bit too pure to be believed, at least by our black and cynical hearts. But every check for duplicity we could think of came up empty. They really were just that nice and wholesome. Bart had to leave the room and dry heave a little, but we made it through the interview and decided that any baby would be lucky to have a home that squeaky clean. If anything could overcome the kid's inherent evil, it would be these friendly folks. Then we went to check out the Euthanatos candidates. The woman was, coincidentally, also named Martha. But there are a lot of women named Martha, so it wasn't really a big deal. Certainly not a life-changing revelation. The prospective father was a bit more in line with the Euthanatos image. The man, whose name was Al, was tall and thin, bordering on cadaverous, and had a neat black suit and tie that matched his polished British accent. Apparently he had been a gentleman's gentleman for a wealthy doctor, and he had ended up almost single-handedly raising his master's young son when the parents died tragically. He and his wife were both mages, and they wanted to do their part to help the tradition and the world in general. The couple seemed nice, too, if a bit darker than their Midwestern rivals. In the end, we decided that while the nickel values, the Euthanatos mages, were probably wonderful people, and a kid would be lucky to have them, they couldn't match the pure, concentrated wholesomeness of Jonathan and Martha. Having determined the ultimate resting place of the child, so we would know which direction in which to run, we set about procuring. The Nefandi house was in a nice residential neighborhood in North Dallas, far from the den of evil that we assumed demon-worshipping mages would choose to abide in. Maybe that said something about the upper middle class, I guess. We observed closely from several hidden vantage points as the evil parents took their demon baby to a nice park. Some of us tossed a frisbee, others took up napping positions, and Weeb used life magic to turn himself into a bird and just sat there as we observed the evil wizards. Everything seemed normal, including the baby, which was fussy but didn't seem demonically so. We did, however, notice several other people also surreptitiously not watching the child. We knew they weren't Euthanatos or choristers because we had asked them to pull their people back while we operated, so there was yet another player involved here. They were also there a few days later when we followed the Doom baby to a local mall. This time, Weeb got a lock on 3 watchers and managed to catch images of them in some selfies he took, sending their pictures to the rest of the group. Several of us focused on them with our magical senses, and were able to determine not only that they resonated magically, but also that they had avatars. While everyone technically has an avatar, they only typically manifest for mages, so we have figured our unknown friends were wizards of some sort. We were going to try the stealthy approach, until Weeb and Bard screwed up the plan. They had the right magical knowledge to see, and noticed that one of the avatars on the 3 misfits we had identified was a large Asian man carrying a halberd and sporting a long, flowing beard. Weeb and Bard were both huge fans of Dynasty Warriors, and the moment they recognized Guan Yu, they marched straight over to ask for his autograph. The god was a lot more chill about the whole thing than the mage he was attached to, who did not expect a couple of randos to walk up and ask to speak to his invisible friend. Fortunately, our usual style of diplomacy, and unabashed fanboying, caused more confusion than concern, so we were able to circumvent a lot of hostility and questioning. It turns out our unidentified stalker friends were members of the Akashiyana, a martial arts-focused tradition of mystics. They had been tracking the Doom Baby just like the other 2 traditions, and were looking to deal with its parents and liberate it as well. It didn't take too long to sell them on the cooperation angle, seeing as it avoided any fights, gave equal aid and access to all parties, and at least kept it out of nefarious Nephandic hands. Well, actually, they had some issue with the willingness of the other 2 traditions to Gilgul the child in the future as a last resort. Gilgul is the destruction of an avatar, preventing the person from doing magic or gaining ascension in all future incarnations. They were more willing to kill the child, again, at some point in the future, as a last resort, than to conduct a Gilgul and doom its future selves as well. We made a counteroffer that, given our spirit abilities and many powerful spiritual allies, we could conceivably make a cage for the inverted avatar rather than destroying it outright. We had no idea if we were powerful enough to do this, but we were good bullshitters, and they believed us. A few calls to our contacts in the other traditions, along with a few outrageous whoppers, got everyone to agree to our non-Gilgul solution. Oh well, we should have a few years to figure out how to make this soul cage. The kid probably wouldn't cause any trouble until then. So with yet another tradition on board, we now had nothing preventing us from taking this baby. Except for its evil magical parents, of course. We figured that, given that they were mages, the house in which the Nefandi family lived was probably booby-trapped out the wazoo. Plus, we didn't want to get into a stand-up fight with any mages if we could keep from it. So we hatched a diabolical plan. We intended to rely on our standard modus operandi for these types of conflicts. Blow the mother up. Literally, in this case. After we grabbed the kid, of course. But since we didn't want any police asking uncomfortable questions about missing children and explosive cover-ups, we figured we would need a childlike body to go with the parents we planned to kill. Because they were evil. We had seen their demonic, freaky avatars to confirm. So we decided to make a meat baby using matter, prime, and a bit of life. Weeb and Tello went to work, while Critical lent meta-mystical assistance, and the child corpse turned out pretty good. We put it in temporal stasis so it wouldn't rot. Then we set about making 2 more corpses the old-fashioned way. Given the layout of the house, which was freely available with some internet sleuthing, we knew the master bedroom was on the 1st floor. And the house was on a corner in its residential neighborhood, with few obstacles between it and the street. We decided throwing a car at them would be a good idea, and would also give an explanation for the fire/explosion we planned. But we needed a patsy for our vehicular manslaughter. We decided to have Weeb transform himself to look like Alwy's evil ex-wife, who deserved a prison term if anyone did. Things went off without a hitch. Using the ex-wife's SUV, which one of our number had conveniently stolen earlier that night while she was distracted hosting a party, Weeb drove toward the house, started to turn around the street, then kept turning as he accelerated through the house wall and into the bedroom. Turns out hitting a sleeping mage with a moving car is lethal. I guess magic's not all it's cracked up to be. Weeb, his part of the mission accomplished, then ran through the streets in a panic in his stolen Visage, taking time to stop in front of a convenient phone camera, held by Bard, to say, "Oh my god, I don't know what happened, I am so high." And then he ran away. One quick text to the police and that part of the job was done. We may be technical heroes, but it doesn't pay to cross us or hurt one of our friends. Tello and Handy led the 2nd team in Operation Child Liberation. Kitty tried to open the front door after our attack, but jumped back with a shout. When we got a look at him, he had visibly aged a decade or 2 later, so we decided to go another route. He got better. Tello opened a portal to the spirit world, and we tried that method. In this area, the house more closely resembled a castle, complete with moat and drawbridge. Several of us pitched in, and, using ectoplasm, created a long plywood plank that we raised over one part of the walk, complete with rope ladder to let us down, and walked over. It was only after we were on the other side that Bard remembered he had numerous friends who could fly who could have just carried us over. But we got it done anyway. As we entered the house, we peeked back into the material realm a few times, but between the numerous wards and spreading flames, the spirit world counterpart was far safer. There were a lot more traps and defenses in the physical world, which told us that neither of the now deceased parents had done much with spirit magic. What few guards there were easily disabled. We made our way to the child's upstairs bedroom, and Handy made a large portal through which we pulled the crib. Then Tello poked her head back into the physical world and mystically turned some of the air into natural gas. It flooded the house, and Tello dropped the meat baby and just barely pulled her head back through the portal before the gas hit the burning car, and the house went up like a fireball. She was fine, and her eyebrows would regrow soon. Our heroic murder-kidnapping accomplished, we got out of there as fast as we could, passing a few incoming police and fire trucks as we went. With a few phone calls, we got the Doom Baby to the Celestial Chorus, and waited around until the Dents picked up the child, and were magically spirited away back to Kansas, where they lived near a chantry that could provide emergency aid. And with that, the world was once more safe from evil babies. Have our heroes left their heroic path? Are they really okay framing someone for manslaughter? Will the Doom Baby fulfill its evil destiny? Find out in the next Mage Storytime.